Congressman, welcome back to the program. Congratulations on the runoff. You lead going into the runoff here with Julie Johnson. The election, though is the day after Memorial Day. Turnout's going to be everything. You and I have both seen races where the lead now doesn't always matter then when people are thinking about other things, including summer vacation and coming off the holiday weekend. But how are you going to get voters to the polls between now and then?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jason. And you're absolutely right. Runoffs are different elections, and I take every election seriously. I've been through a runoff before, as you probably remember,
Yeah.
back in 2018. We had a large primary that I won by double digits as well, and that one, and then had to go to a runoff. And so we know what we want to do, but I think it's an opportunity to clarify, some of the positions and some of the ideas that I have, some of the big ideas that I have, for the district and for our area, and to show that I have a record of doing that, like with the Garland VA, but to also draw some distinctions on how you go about doing your business while you're in Congress. And so I'm looking forward to it.
Let's talk about those distinctions, though. But Democratic voters are going to see your name next to Julie Johnson's name on the runoff ballot there. You both served in Congress. You both have similar positions on a lot of issues. But what is the clearest contrast you would tell Democratic voters between you two?
Yeah. Well, listen, I have a story that has led me to believe that we have to still try and do big things and that we have to try and make things easier and better for working people. I was raised here, by a single mom and grew up struggling here in Dallas. But because of this community and because some folks gave me a chance, I've been able to do everything that I've done. And I really have, am excited about the opportunity to talk in this runoff period about some of the big things that I know that working people need us to do to make their lives a bit better on housing, on childcare, on healthcare, on the cost of higher education, and that I have a record of delivering on those things. But also, I do think it's important how you conduct yourself. And I've rejected PAC money during my entire time running for office. I've rejected and never traded a single stock. Julie Johnson has made a very different decision. She's taken hundreds of thousands of dollars in PAC money. She's one of the top stock traders in the entire country. And I think that matters as well.
When you served, you mentioned a moment ago too how you successfully got the new VA hospital there in Garland in the old 32, $135 million for housing, transportation, other issues that you brought back to the district. But what specific projects now do you want to bring to District 33 if you're elected?
Yeah, there's important investments I think we need to continue to make in transportation, particularly through DART, and I think we can do a lot better there. Certainly, places like UT Southwestern that I've supported in the past are important institutions that are going to allow us to continue to be a leader in some of these fields that we've been leading in North Texas. But I think one of the things that I know we have to address first and foremost is that working people feel like they are working harder and harder for less, and that they're stuck in a rut, that they're treading water. And this war in Iran is making that even more expensive, but they're seeing it every single day. And I know that there are some pinch points that families are going through that we can help with. When I talk to folks, they don't think we can deliver everything for them. They don't expect that. But they do think that if we can just make them a priority, that they'll take it the rest of the way. And that's my story as well. And so those pinch points of the cost of childcare, of the cost of their healthcare, of the cost of housing and being able to own a house, those are areas that I know we can help with, and that I want to make sure that we have concrete ideas that we know that folks can say, I can take this to the bank, we can make this happen.
A couple other Johnson questions here. I got out of place on my list here, Congressman. But Johnson has argued, without naming you, that Texas 33 needs someone who has, quote, been present in the tough moments and not someone who's parachuting back in when another campaign doesn't work out. How do you answer that charge of opportunism?
I've been working here since 2014 on when I first started doing voting rights work for Wendy Davis. I've been somebody who this community knows and knows well. Certainly have served us in Congress. And one of the reasons why I thought this was important that we have a strong voice in this newly drawn district is that it's a district that is heavily majority minority, that has a lot of different communities in it, that has a lot of the places that I grew up in it, and that I know well, and that I can serve in a way that is not just about me, but is about putting those folks first. That I have a record of delivering on that, and that I put in place certain restrictions on myself. So you don't ever have to wonder who I'm serving. You don't ever have to wonder why I'm doing something. You don't have to wonder if I'm taking, a PAC contribution from Big Pharma, for example, and then saying that I'm going to take on the cost of healthcare, like Julie Johnson has done, or that I'm trading stocks on Palantir, which is a technology company being used by ICE and this administration, buying and selling that stock during my time in Congress, but also saying I'm going to stand up to them. You don't have to wonder if I'm going to do that, because I never have and I never will. And so I'm really looking forward to having that discussion over the course of these next few months, because I think the thing I see us fighting often against is the cynicism that anything at all can be done, and that maybe everybody's just corrupt. And I want to clean that up.
But there might be some skeptical voters out there, Congressman, who say, "Oh, well, listen, he left Congress to run for Senate and was unsuccessful in that against Ted Cruz, ran again for Senate." What do you tell skeptical Democrats about service versus political positioning?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think part of what I did in the runoff or in the Senate race was to make sure that we avoided a runoff and to give the nominee this time right now that they have, that the Republican nominee does not have, because I know what that means to be the nominee for our party and to need to have those 3 months to build up to run against a machine that is in place here in Texas on the Republican side that has hundreds of millions of dollars behind it, and that it's going to be incredibly difficult to take on. And so I understand exactly why I did what I did, which was from a service-oriented perspective, knowing that I could have been still in this race for the United States Senate, but also thinking they've redrawn our districts. They've taken away our voices. We have fewer districts that a Democrat will have a chance to represent here in North Texas. And so in those fewer districts, we need to have stronger voices. We need to have our best players on the field, if you will. And that's what I think I can be.
And Congressman, you exchanged words with Mr. Tallarico during the Democratic primary for Senate. You told him to keep your name out of his mouth. Have you spoken to him since his victory?
I've not, but listen, I wish the ticket well. And listen, I've been trying to elect Democrats statewide in this state since 2014.
Will
Right?
you ask for his endorsement?
What I'm looking for, what I'm focused on is my race in terms of, I don't need to be endorsed really by anybody except for the folks who I think locally I respect and who I think locally can have an impact. I've never really felt that endorsements are, that impactful, other than when you can say there's a reason why these folks are endorsing, and you know them in your community, and this is why it's important. And so what I'm, most focused on, of course, is my runoff race, but also on the aspects and what we need here locally. And I think we sometimes can fall into the trap of making everything about the next race or a broader argument, when really what we need in North Texas is a representative who's focused on us. And that's certainly what I've always been when I was in Congress. And that's what I'll be again.
Let's talk about the war in Iran right now. Clerics in the country just named Khamenei's son, one of his sons, to lead the country. He's expected to continue the confrontation with Israel and the United States. Where do you think this conflict is going?
Well, first of all, I just think the process of how this was pursued was outrageous, un-American, and unconstitutional, as I see it. And folks should know that there's a reason why we have these discussions in our democracy, why we come to Congress for congressional authorization for the use of military force, why even President Bush did that before going into Iraq, which I disagreed with and think was, a foreign policy mistake, clearly. But that discussion was still had. And there was no discussion here, or no laying out of the goals and the plans and the reasons for why we're going to war with a country with 90 million people that's the size of Western Europe. And that cannot be won by just airstrikes. The United States military and a lot of our North Texas residents have served or are serving, and I'm so proud of them. They will carry out any mission we give them, and they will complete that mission. But what we can't do is give them a mission that is outside of what their capabilities are, which is what I think what we're seeing here, right? Airstrikes alone are not going to result in what we would like to have, which is a stable and less violent Middle East,
Yeah.
and a Iran that is constrained. That's not going to do it.
How do you think the conflict in Iran is going to end?
Well, I don't know. And I don't really know what our end goal is. And that's one of the things that's most frustrating to me. Because I think if you enter into a war, if you ask our young people to risk their lives to do this, and you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars of our taxpayer dollars on that you should be able to tell the American people exactly what that end goal is. But what I do know is that we often, when we start conflicts like this, we often can't control how they end. When you see the Iraq War and mission accomplished, a year after we go in, yes, we can beat the Iraqi military, but then we had a decade of civil war and unrest that has still left Iraq as a shell of what it used to be, and that's still a violent place. And I've been there and I've seen it myself. So we often don't know how these things will end, and that's one of the reasons why I think you have to be so careful entering into these conflicts.
Congressman, good to see you. Congratulations again.
Thank you, Jason.